Welcome, everyone. Today I will ask and try to answer the age-old question, what time is it? We will look at different kinds of time and different aspects to consider in your data warehouse. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kaul. I'm based in Munich in the lovely Bavaria, and working as what I call data modeling aficionado and data structure designer. I'm the organizer of the data modeling Meetup Munich group, and also the conference chair of the Knowledge Gap Data Modeling and Data Architecture Conference. Neil and Alex were guests last year, but we also have a quite interesting lineup for this year. If you're interested, just ask me and I can give you some more info. So what's the main topic here? We want to know really what time is it, and what you should do with it. So we're looking at all the different kinds of time and terms for kinds of time, and how to make sense of them and how to deal with them. So this presentation basically has two parts. The first part, who has the time, is really about all these different terms for different kinds of time that people have come up with, and the attempt to understand it. And the second part, what to do with your time, is to give you some hints about how to deal with all this mess, and how to simplify it for presentation. So first, who has time? A brief history of kinds of time. This is not exhaustive, but I would say exhaustive enough. So let's see what we have here. Maybe this is a name that rings a bell. Richard T. Snodgrass, who has written a classic book about time and databases, and he distinguished two kinds of time. One thing he called valid time, and one thing he called transaction time. So valid time is basically when something happens in real life, or what he calls the model reality. And transaction time is basically when the time when it was stored in the database. So those are two concepts that come up again and again, just with different names. So Richard Snodgrass calls it valid time and transaction time. And then the SQL 2011 standard came along and rebranded them in a very confusing way. Application time is a period whose period name is not system time. Is also known as application time period, and system time, a period whose period name is system time, is also known as system time period. So if you look at the context in the end, what they wanted to do, the valid time is application time, transaction time is system time, but apparently they wanted to package it in the most confusing way possible. And I don't think, even though this is part of the SQL standard now, that it really has caught on. But this was an attempt to standardize this, and I don't know what went wrong here. The next one is again, some of these names might ring bells, especially Chris Tate is a really pioneer of relational theory. He also has an upcoming webinar. I think if you're interested, I can point you to it. And they basically again use the same two concepts with different names. They call it stated time and log time. So stated time is basically when something was true in real life. Log time is when it was written to the database. And these terms are at least a bit less confusing than the SQL standard. But still, if you try to understand their book and what they're aiming at, it's kind of hard to grasp. A new addition here is Martin Fowler. You probably know Martin Fowler from his company ThoughtWorks, and his work on data modeling patterns, on object orientation, and so on. And he basically also uses the same two concepts, but with I think quite understandable and human-friendly names. So he calls it actual time and record time. So actual time is when something happened in real life. Record time is when it was stored to the database. And he rightly says he tried the established terms at the time, but people found them confusing. And actual record is really something which I think, if you're just trying to differentiate these two kinds of time is something that works quite well. We have another theorist of time and databases, Tom Johnston, who I think for the first time introduces like conceptually the different kind of time. So it's not just a renaming of the same two kinds of time that Snodgrass had. So state time is when something happens in real life. Assertion time is basically when it's said that something is true. So for example, I have a car accident, I don't know, today, and then next week I fill the paperwork to the insurance company, and I'm asserting that I had a car accident last week. So this is when something happened in real life. This is when someone said that something happened, basically. Tom Johnston then fleshed this out a bit more, because like state time is fine, that's when something happens in real life, but he generalized the assertion time to speech act time. So basically any kind of like position or reaction someone can have to something happens. So it can be assertion, so someone says something is true. It can be withdrawal, where someone says, yeah, something is not true anymore. It can be assent, where someone says, yeah, okay, someone said this is true and I agree. Or dissent, someone said it's true, I disagree. Or notice, so just noticing that someone says something is true, but I'm not saying it's true or not true. So for example, in the car accident and insurance example, so I'm definitely asserting that I had an accident, and I sent my paperwork to the insurance company, and they notice my paperwork at first, and then they do their own research before they make a statement to the veracity of what I said. And the third kind of time is inscription time, which is basically again a rebranding of Snodgrass's transaction time, basically when something was written to the database. And maybe you already can see a trend here that like in most cases we have like rebrandings of like something happening in real life, something being stored in the database, and then there's something in the middle where basically people position themselves to something which will become our like third real different kind of time. There's a guy called Philip Salvesberg, which I don't think is an especially prominent member of the data community, no offense. He has also valid time and transaction time, pretty much like Snodgrass, and he added like a special case decision time, the date and time a decision has been made about something, which I would assume is like a very special case of like the speech act time, but we get to that. And finally, another very interesting guy is Michael Brackett of Dharma fame, who has written a lot of data books, and in one of them he distinguished like even 5 kinds of time for like the entire time life cycle, you could say. So business change time is when something happened in the real life. Organization notification time is when like the organization becomes aware that something. No, not when someone tells the organization that something has happened. So this would be me saying that I had an accident. Receipt time would be when the organization like gets my message. Change entry time is when like some poor person at the insurance company is entering the stuff about my case into their operational database or operational system. And change availability time is when something is available for downstream processing, basically. So something happens in real life, someone tries to tell you that it happened, you receive what the person tried to tell you, you process this in your operational system, and then here's in your data warehouse or data mart, basically. And I think that this is like a nice life cycle that hasn't gotten enough attention. This is really, I think, the other major addition to the kinds of time, apart from like the third kind of time that we got from Tom Johnston. We're still not quite there. There's still some other kinds of time, but we're really now getting on solid ground with different kinds. So Lars Rönnbeck, who you might know from anchor modeling. He's also very active in the data community on LinkedIn. He has changing time, happening time, and recording time. Recording time is again when something is stored in the database, and changing time and happening time are basically two aspects of when something happens in real life. So changing time is like the more general one, when basically a value, like the time when a value is considered true in real life. And happening time is when an event happens in real life, basically. And then this is also quite similar, like another time classification from Lars Rönnbeck, similar to what Tom Johnson did. Appearance time is again like when something happens in real life, and assertion time is basically Johnson's speech act time. So when someone says something about something that has happened in real life, this can be either agreeing or disagreeing or saying they don't care. So this is very similar to the speech act time. And I think your head is probably already spinning right now, but we're almost there. We're almost through the list of terms for kinds of time that people have proposed. We have still have Peter Bellis, who you might know as the guy behind the Data Vault Builder, like a popular data warehouse automation tool. He distinguishes 3 dimensions of time. Like the first one is business validity, valid time, like when something happens in real life, we know that. Second is the inscription time in like the operational database. The third one is the data warehouse load time. So he has 3 dimensions, but not quite the same as Johnson's, because here basically those are 2 special cases of inscription time. It's just like this is the operational database and this is in the data warehouse. Then we have the terms from also a pretty prominent data vault person now, Patrick Cuba, who wrote the book, The Data Vault Guru. He distinguishes load time, which you probably already know as data vault people, and applied time, which is basically the package or extract time of when you get your source data. So basically, this is when like the source data is packaged. This is when the source data is received by the data warehouse. I've found some more definitions of applied time by other data vault people, but this was hard to really pin it down. Like I found a blog post from Dan Lindstedt where he basically said applied time is everything that is not load time, which was a bit too fuzzy to be included here. So I left it at that. And I think, yeah, this is the final one. For those of you who are active in the Kafka message queues space, they also distinguish 3 kinds of time. Where event time, I had a bit of a hard time getting that, but from like the documentation, the examples, it seems really this is a special case of something happening in real life where it's captured by a sensor or tracking device or whatever. So you could argue that it's a technical inscription time, but it seems it's really like the moment where something is measured by some kind of device. So I would argue it's still like something happening in real life that's just coincidentally also measured by a technical device. And then we have ingestion time and processing time, which is again like some kind of special case for technical inscription time, just geared towards like Kafka and stream processing instead of traditional databases. I hope you're still there, because we were now trying to get all this together. So I'm arguing like similar to Peter Bellis, just with the different, slightly different focus that we have 3 main dimensions of time. So there are all kinds of terms that describe a point in time when a fact is true in the real world, like valid time, application time, stated time, actual time, state time, business change time, and so on. So I would argue this is like one of the time dimensions, and probably the most interesting time dimensions to most normal people as opposed to data warehouse people, like really when something was true in real life. And I'm a big fan of Lars Rembeck's terminology, so I tend to call it appearance time, but maybe actual time, like the Martin Fowler term, is really something that brings the point home. This is really like when something is happening in real life. The second dimension is the assertion speech act time thingy. So this is when someone, like some human, makes a statement about something. So when I say something is true, something is not true, when I say something happened at some point in actual time. So this like Rembeck assertion time or speech act time or whatever. And also several of the these time life cycle times from Mike Brackett for into the scope. So this here, organization notification time, organization receipt time. And finally, we have like the technical dimension, so the terms describing a point in time when a statement about something like is stored in a database or other means of persistent storage, like what Snodgrass called transaction time, but other people call system time, record time, and so on. Like I'm a fan of recording time, but inscription time is equally valid. So this is just this should bring home that this is like a technical time when something is stored in a database or something like that. And if we try to get all this together, so then we have these three main time dimensions. Like I used the Rembeck terminology, but I'm also fine with I don't know, a mix of Fowler and Johnson terminology or whatever, just to bring home like this is when something happens in real life. There are all kinds of alternative terms for this. This is when something is said about something happening, like assertion time or speech act time. And this is like the technical timeline, recording time, transaction time, system time, log time, inscription time, whatever. And there, of course, there are some special cases. So I would argue that the happening time is a bit special because it's specifically about real life events. The business change time is again special because it's like about events relevant in the business world. And the event time is also a special case because it's about events captured by some kind of sensor or tracking device. For the second, like the speech act timeline, you could see like Johnston's special cases of speech act time as variants. So the assertion time when someone says it's true, withdrawal time someone says it's not true, assent when someone agrees, dissent when someone disagrees, notice time when someone notices. And organization receipt time is basically the same thing as notice time, just from the perspective of the organization. And arguably decision time and organization notification times are also like special cases of assertion time. This is basically decision times when you assert something for the first time, and organization notification time is also when you assert something toward the organization. And finally, for the recording time, we also have some special cases like the change entry time when someone enters something in the operational system. The change availability time is when like this stuff has been processed and is available for downstream consumption. And you could again like break down change availability time into different special cases depending on your perspective. Like applied time is when it's packaged in the operational system. Ingestion time is when it's fed into like whatever you're using. Load time is when it's has arrived in the data warehouse. Processing time is when it basically has been processed for downstream consumption. And I hope that this at least helps to give you an impression of like all these different kinds of time and like the terminology used around it, where you see that yes, in many cases people just reintroduce the same thing again and again with synonyms. This especially happens with the like appearance time, actual time, and the recording time and inscription time. But there are also some interesting special cases that might be relevant to you. I think this is a good point to make a cut and see if there are any questions or comments to that. So also to give you a bit of room for breathing, because I know this was quite a lot. So any questions, remarks, comments?
Thank you, Christian. Yeah, there's one question in the chat at the moment, and another one just came in. Would you like me to read them out?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So first one, would it be good to discern between time about the data and time for the actual thing in the real world, where assertion and appearance, in most cases, are the real world things, and then you have the time of data acts?
I'm not 100% sure if I have understood the question completely, but yes, in general, it makes sense to distinguish when something is happening in real life and then when it's like recorded in different kinds of systems or databases. So I guess, yeah. So I guess these are like the main time dimensions that you will also encounter, that like real life time and database time, basically.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Then the next question in the chat so far. In passing, I think that Lars Ronback had not just a single date time, but also a period of time, i.e. a start date time and an end date time. Do you have any comments on that?
I'm pretty sure he talked about something like that, but I wanted to keep it to like kinds of timeline and not get into this kind of specifics.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. All right, that's it from the chat. Does anyone else want to unmute and ask any questions directly? If you have time, Christian.
Yeah, sure. I think we're still good with the time.
Yeah.
Okay, this doesn't seem to be the case. So then I'll continue with the second part of the presentation.
Thank you.
So we've seen that there are like many kinds of times, and potentially at least some of them are relevant to your data warehouse and your data vault. So the second question is what to do with your time and how to deal with these different kinds of time. The first part of this question is like, how much time can you have? So like, what kinds of time are available to you? So this for data vault or data warehouse, this usually boils down to what do your operational systems store? Do they store appearance time? Do they store assertion times? Do they store their own recording time? If they don't, why not? Can that change? Should it change? So this is something where you might have to have a close look at like the operational systems you work with, and also maybe some not so nice conversations with the people responsible for them if they don't store any kinds of time. In many cases, we don't have like any kind of assertion time at all, but often this is also not that critical. So in many cases, you just want to know like when something happened in real life and when this was stored in the database. But sometimes you don't even have that, and then you probably have to have some conversation with the people responsible for the systems if they can do anything about it. And then the other part of the question, like how much time should you have? Like you don't want to overwhelm your stakeholders with 17 different kinds of time. So what do they want to know? Do they want to know like the real life appearance times? Do they want to know anyone's assertion times? Do you want to know the operational recording time? This happens surprisingly often that people want to have like a history according to what the source system said, because they are very familiar with the system, working with the system all the time. Do they want to know the data warehouse recording time? Usually not, but since this is like the time that we most reliably have in the data warehouse, sometimes we force it upon them. And of course, you should try to understand like their needs, why they need this kind of time, why they think they don't need this kind of time, and if this can change. So if there can be additional needs or needs disappearing. And like these two questions, like how much time can you have, how much time should you have, boil down to the distinction between like storage of timelines in the data warehouse and the presentation of timelines in the data warehouse. So you definitely should store all kinds of time your operational systems can deliver like in line with data vault principle, all the data all of the time. You definitely should store all kinds of time you need for regulatory requirements. If you need some kind of timeline for state regulators, tax authorities, whatever, and you definitely should also store the data warehouse recording time. But I think if you're doing data vault, you're safe there because this is stored by default. And on the presentation side, on the data mart side, you should present as few kinds of time as possible, again, to avoid confusing users. You should give the kinds of time that the users need for a given use case and not more. You should give users like try-temporal or something if they haven't asked for it. And usually people are most interested in real life kinds of time, like the actual time when something happens, with the caveat to the extent possible, because in many cases, like the operational system doesn't store the actual real life time. You don't know this. So you might have to approximate this with some kind of recording time from the operational system or even from the data warehouse. And when you have this like awareness, you should basically store everything you can get and present as little as possible in terms of different kinds of time. You should also try to have some kind of terminology for the views you will offer in the presentation layer. One kind of terminology that I've seen, which is kind of nice, but also I don't think like generally accepted, is this with these now then. So this is assuming that you have a bitemporal data situation. How can you offer like non-temporal views that don't confuse people with multiple kinds of history? So this could be a now view, where you're basically saying, I'm showing reality now as I think it is now, which is, I guess, the most sensible, most popular view. You're just showing to your current knowledge what the current reality is. But of course, there are variants there. Now then could be relevant if you're saying like, this is some important point in time. I don't know, the end of the quarter, the end of the fiscal year, whatever. And this is our understanding now of the situation then. Then there's then basically this is some kind of as posted view. So at some point in the past, what was our understanding of the same point in the past or some other point in the past? And like the probably most obscure one is like then now. So what was our understanding at some point in the past of what things would be now? So for this is primarily for changing forecasts. So you have some kind of forecast about like 2022. You made one like in your 5-year plan, and then in your short-term planning, and so on. And you can then compare like how your forecasts changed over time. Another case for this is probably election forecasting. Like you have a fixed point. There's an election at some date, and you have all kinds of forecasts over time, which is kind of like probably the most popular variation of this theme. So this is like the non-temporal views. You try to get history out of it. Then there are unitemporal views, where you're like fixing one of the two timelines and leaving the other one variable. So probably the more popular one is like this fixed variable one, where your assertion time is fixed and you get the appearance time history. So this is like the history of real life changes, the actual history as it presents itself now to our current knowledge. But this also could be the other way around. Again, like for the changing forecast situation, where you have like the full assertion time history for the fixed appearance time.